Ahoy! In this video we're going to take a look at various advanced movement techniques that you can use in Dune Awakening. We're going to start out with some more simple techniques and some simpler belts and then go to the more advanced stuff. Ability wise we are primarily going to focus on the Shigawire Claw, Bindu Sprint as well as a knee charge. There are also the suspensor pads, but those don't seem to work as well with other momentum because they kind of just lift you up. They're nice in early game if you need to get to high places and you don't have these other tools yet, but later on they won't be quite as useful. The belts we're looking at are the passive suspensor belt, the responsive planar suspensor belt, which is the upgrade version of the planar suspensor belt, as well as the full suspensor belt, which is the best one of the mobility belts. Other belts do similar things just to a lesser extent. The passive suspensor belt is what you have at the start of the game. This just stops you from taking fall damage, just slows you down, uses energy. But this actually has a little trick that was discovered by Nux, and I'd like to credit him here. And you can see that right here. When jumping up on relatively flat walls, for some reason this registers as you being in a falling state, and this gives you this floating effect, which is kind of similar to other suspensor belts. And you can utilize this with your Shigawire Claw, because you can use this momentum. We're jumping up, we have this momentum, and then we pull ourselves up. We are suddenly going very, very high, very quickly, and now we're just kind of hovering here, and we can just grab the Shigawire again, and we made it to the top of this rock very, very easily, which would normally take us quite a while to climb. So the momentum that you can get from this is quite high. Once you get used to this weird action of like kind of dropping down and then using that to launch yourself up. And you will see something similar with the full suspensor belt later. But with this particular suspensor belt, I think it's a bit more worth pointing out as something unusual where you can use this. But this only works on surfaces where you get this effect. You can see this is somewhat forward angled and we are not getting the same effect. It does not register at dropping down for some reason. So you'd have to, at this point, intentionally drop down and then try to rope yourself back up without falling to the ground, which is a lot more difficult. And this is just an early stage belt anyways. As for the responsive planar suspensor belt, this one is basically just there to hold you in place so you can pull out your gun and shoot at someone while flying around, utilize effects that allow you to deal more damage while in the air. Quite useful for that, unfortunately not very great for everything else for one particular reason, that is the momentum. If we are using an ability and using this afterwards, it kind of slows us down because it wants to control the movement, which is kind of the opposite of what other belts do. They kind of take that momentum, and in this case you're kind of just losing all of it and getting control in return, but it doesn't take you very far. And that's obviously not what we want if we want to travel far. So this has very niche use cases. Also worth noting that it drains a ton of durability from this thing. I just repaired this and it's already losing this much from a couple seconds of use. What I wanted to point out with this is if you're using this planar version of the belt, then I recommend turning on Suspensor Lock. What this does is it allows you to press the button once and then just don't do anything. You can take your hands off the keyboard and you will still be hovering. And I think if you want this level of control, it's just easier if you don't have to hold this button the whole time. And then if you press it again, you drop back down. Not necessary for other belts, but for this particular belt, I think it's quite useful. And that gets us to, in my opinion, the best belt, the full suspensor belt, which allows you to just jump up and fly further, carry that momentum, as well as drop down and stop yourself from taking damage on the way down. Very, very nice. The only problem is this also runs out relatively quickly if you do the things that we are about to do with it. Before we get into that, a bit more on the abilities. Shigawire Claw is your bread and butter movement skill that most people are using because it works well horizontally and it works well vertically. So it's a very good all-rounder. It also is very good in combat itself with the stagger. When you level this ability, it's a bit different from others. Normally by leveling ability you would reduce the cooldown and other effects on it, and in this case that doesn't happen. You only increase the range with each level. And that I think is a downside. I'd like to only put 2 points into this because I think the slightly increased range is nice, but the maxed out range isn't really necessary. Though the longer the range, the more momentum you can get from this. So if you get 3 points into it, you can move further. If you enjoyed the video so far, consider subscribing and clicking the bell. For reference, on rank 2 you can see we kind of have about this much reach vertically, which gets us fairly high still by itself. And then on the horizontal we will have just about this much, and that's where it turns red. You develop your muscle memory for this eventually, and this is also relevant especially if you're flying up, because obviously you're gonna go out of reach of things eventually, and you kind of get a feel for where you can be in the air to still get that momentum going. So that's why I like the rank 2 better than the rank 1. Otherwise, from the air, it's a bit annoying. Bindu Sprint is very different when leveled, and I am currently using the rank 1, but if I was using this ability actively, I just have it on my hotbar for demonstration here, I would level this up. Because as you can see here, the cooldown starts at 20 seconds, 15 stamina cost, and 40 stamina drain. Rank 2, the stamina drain is already half, the cooldown goes down a second, and the start cost goes down by 5. Rank 3, we barely have any start cost, cooldown's 18 seconds, and the drain is 10. So the points in this ability really make a big difference if you want to use it. By itself, this is your charge up, and then you can get a little hover jump at the end. Obviously don't do that the way I just did, because otherwise you're going to attract a sandworm. But yeah, also a very effective skill, especially for horizontal movement, especially for early game if you don't have other skills to combine it with yet. I think the movement that you get from that is quite nice. Knee charge, also an ability that is very useful to level up. As you can see, we have 15 cooldown on rank 1, 15 stamina cost, 50 damage, and 120 poise damage. And everything except the stamina cost changes. Cooldown goes down, damage goes up, poise damage goes up as well. So just a very effective ability to put points into. It's not super expensive either. So these are points that I will eventually spend once I'm done testing a ton of things. I will definitely run the knee charge on rank 3 here with a 10 seconds cooldown, which is very short. 325 damage, which is not bad, though reduced in PvP, and good poise damage. Is that how you pronounce that word? I don't know. What I do know, it's a very nice forward mobility. You can combo it with a dash for some little bit of extra mobility, but all of these 3 abilities chain very, very nicely with the full suspensor belt, and that is where your main mobility will come from. So we can start, for example, by just hovering up here with the suspensor belt, and then we grapple onto this, and we want to pull back to fly as high as possible. This feels counterintuitive. If you press forward, you will latch onto the wall too quick. But you can see I actually stopped myself here because I don't want to go too far up and break my belt in the process. Pulling back, pressing S while moving up makes you go massively higher. You kind of just move outward a little bit, and that's very, very important in order to get the maximum height from this. I'm going to demonstrate that again. I can also demonstrate it from the ground here. So if we grapple and then we immediately press spacebar and I'll press spacebar and S, then we will go up and away like this, and we keep all this momentum. So at this point I'm just holding spacebar, I'm not holding anything else, I'm just going straight up, and I can kind of do this until I run out of energy. And since we're already up top, this is a wonderful demonstration for a knee charge or a Bindu Sprint. We are going to start with the Bindu Sprint here. This is an incredible horizontal mobility ability, so we can just jump off here and fly, and yeah, we'll probably land on that island over there, and I can just very slowly stagger this here and keep my energy at a reasonable level. I will still go very, very, very far, so nothing to worry about there. You will always cover a lot of ground, and yep, we just made it into the next territory in a single jump quite easily. Again, this drains the durability of your suspensor belt. It also goes on your power pack. So I'm carrying 2 of these at all times because that really runs out often compared to anything else in the game. The knee charge won't go quite as far probably, but it also has basically no windup and more combat utility in comparison. We can try it right here. You can go relatively high with it too, but it does latch onto walls more than you would with the Shigawire Claw. So the ideal use of it, in my opinion, is more of a diagonal angle. You jump forward and then you use the belt. And let's see how far it takes us in comparison. But it's still very, very good. And also we have to keep in mind that we had a bit of a height advantage with the Bindu Sprint there. But you can also see the warning right there, belt's about to break. So that happens very, very quickly. We are almost out of belt here, so I'm going to use this on the ground here instead to demonstrate the Shigawire movement. Again, horizontally the Shigawire is probably the weakest, but still very strong. We can kind of just hover like this and then pull ourselves forward, and we can still go fairly far with fairly high speed, just not the highest possible speed. So all in all, each of these can make for great mobility. I can also show you the sprint on the ground here in comparison. We can jump up at any point and we can start flying and still keep a ridiculous amount of momentum here, and speed especially compared to the other two. I think you just have that very strong forward motion. So a lot you can do with all three. In my opinion, the sprint is very, very good in early game, the Bindu Sprint, because you won't have as many other mobility tools yet. Later on it becomes less important, and unfortunately, compared to the others, it doesn't do quite as much in combat, unless your combat is just running away and kiting and shooting enemies from a distance. Then it can be more useful. But generally, the others have a combat effect, they have a stagger, and the sprint does not. You can control the sprint, by the way. You can slightly change direction, but not very much. And as you can see, if you do it for too long, you also run out of stamina. Again, this is a tier 1 sprint. The higher tier you sprint, the better it is. I will also acknowledge the weirding step here, which is technically a movement ability, but it only works with enemies. So for movement in the open world, it's not really useful. On the other hand, it is useful to get the cool smoking effect that I have around my character. If you're wondering how I got that, I just spammed that ability without a target. Gives me WoW vanilla vibes Bloodfang hood, so that's pretty cool. Of course, once you get to the ornithopter, especially the higher tiers, everything changes because you get access to way better mobility, but I will make a separate video talking about how you can maximize that. If you're interested in that, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you get notified. We also have an advanced combat guide soon, breaking down some cancels of various kinds with abilities included. So if you're interested in that, same deal. Other than that, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you for the next one soon. And thanks to my patrons for supporting this video. Duke Sloth, out.